In other news now, Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Turkish counterpart, President Erdogan, have inaugurated the construction of Turkey's first nuclear power plant. The project's being funded by Russia, having been revived since relations between the two nations started to improve. Talks in Ankara between the two leaders focused on security and trade, and Mr. Putin spoke of their close ties.
Turkey for us is a reliable and constructive partner. We work together in resolving regional and international issues. So in that sense, there is nothing that can tarnish our relationship with Turkey.
And also making news today, train services across France have been severely disrupted at the start of 3 months of strikes in protest at the government's labour reforms. Walkouts will take place on 2 days in every 5. They're protesting against plans to reform employment contracts and to open the state-owned railway company to private competition. The head of Britain's Defence Ministry laboratory has said it's not been able to verify the precise source of the nerve agent used in the attack on a former Russian spy and his daughter in Salisbury. The lab identified it as Novichok and being military grade, but he said the government had used other sources to piece together their conclusions. And China has confirmed to the World Trade Organization that it is imposing $611 million worth of retaliatory tariffs on U.S. imports, including pork, nuts and ethanol. It's in response to American duties on aluminium and steel. The dispute has raised fears of a trade war between the world's two biggest economies. And now to Beijing, where the story of parents being reunited with their daughter has captivated not just China, but the rest of the world too. The girl went missing aged 3 in 1994. Now, her father did everything he could to find her, including working as a taxi driver so he could better publicize his search. He had no picture, but the internet and a sketch artist and a simple stroke of luck combined to bring the family together. Our China correspondent Stephen McDonald has the incredible story.
After 24 years, a once little girl who disappeared, now a woman, is heading home. Her parents never stopped searching for their missing 3-year-old named Qifeng. Thanks to a relentless social media campaign, the 27-year-old, now named Keng Ying, found them.
I never thought this was possible. It's like somebody in a dream has appeared before me. It's unbelievable.
In 1994, her father and mother briefly lost sight of their daughter while running a busy fruit stall, and she was gone. Wang Mingqing became a taxi driver, asking customers to help find her via online chat platforms. It worked, and their DNA matches. Today's dramatic reunion has captured the hearts of Chinese people, who know that thousands of children in their country are kidnapped every year, and many sold into adoption. But unlike other parents still grieving for their lost children, this family is finally together again. Stephen McDonald, BBC News, Hong Kong.
Conservationists are borrowing techniques from astronomers in order to survey endangered species. The aim of so-called astroecology is to develop a system that automatically identifies animals from a drone-mounted camera. Our science correspondent Palav Ghosh has the details.
The heat signature of a group of chimps wandering through their habitat. This is a new way of keeping track of endangered species. A little further along, rhinos, snuffling the ground for food. And these baboons can be seen even through the treetops. Currently, conservationists such as Serge Vich count the animals from the ground. It's a painstaking process and not always accurate.
We have too many areas where we don't know how many animals there are, we don't know where they are, and we don't know whether those populations are increasing or decreasing. And that's a real problem for conservation management.
Here at Knowsley Safari Park in Merseyside, Serge is testing out a system that films the animal's heat signature from the air. The drone could spot far more animals from the air, but the problem was that the researchers couldn't tell what they were, especially if they are far away. What they needed was a system that could identify them from the heat they gave off. What Serge needed was the help of an astronomer. Claire Burke uses software that automatically identifies the size and age of stars from the pattern of heat they give off. She adapted it to analyse the pictures from Serge's drone, and she found that different animals have their own distinct heat pattern.
Each different species of animals has a unique thermal fingerprint, so they all look different depending on what species they are. And because of this, we can construct a machine learning based algorithm which will tell the difference automatically between rhinos and elephants and giraffes, and this is what we hope to do with it at the end of the day.
The researchers have found that their drone system can successfully identify species at Knowsley Safari Park, so they'll be trying it out in the wild next month. If it performs just as well, it will give conservationists the detailed information they need to protect the planet's endangered animals. Palab Ghosh, BBC News, Liverpool.
Well, you're watching Newsday on the BBC. Still to come on the programme, the Chinese family reunited with their long-lost child. That story we just brought you. We'll be taking a look at what the national media are saying about it.
Also on the programme, Britain's Duke of Edinburgh is admitted to hospital in London where he's to undergo a hip operation.
The accident that
Welcome back. You're watching Newsday on the BBC. I'm Sharon G. Lail in Singapore.
I'm Babita Sharma in London. Our breaking news for you this hour. At least 3 people have been wounded, one critically, after a person opened fire at the headquarters of YouTube in California. The shooter, a woman, is said to have killed herself.
A Chinese couple have been reunited with their missing daughter after a 24-year search under the glare of the state media. And dozens of newly discovered giant dinosaur footprints on a Scottish island are helping to shed light on the Jurassic reptile's evolution. And that's a story that's popular on BBC.com. But let's take a look at what stories are popular on the front pages from around the world now. We start with the China Daily, which reports, of course, on that heart-warming reunion story we brought you earlier in the show. This is about the man who obviously he lost his daughter more than 20 years ago, but he says he made her sweet dumplings for her first meal back home. Now, in the Financial Times, it's asking the question, will Spotify hit the right note with investors? They look into the company's unusual approach and how it might have been affected by the recent slide on tech stocks. And finally, the Business Times here in Singapore is running a story on the platform Grab. That's the ride-hailing service here. The story details how it's making a play for more Southeast Asian startups to expand after taking over Uber's regional business. Now, that were the stories that were popular in the papers. But, Babita, you've got a story which I kind of just told you about, but it's been sparking discussions online.
Yeah, absolutely. It's because, Sharon, lots of people have been talking about the price of the shares of Spotify, the music streaming firm that surged after trading publicly for the first time on Tuesday. Now, the stock opened at $166, more than a quarter higher than the $132 guide price that was set by the New York Stock Exchange on Monday.
Now, it's 50 years since Martin Luther King was shot dead on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. Now, though legal equality was achieved with the Civil Rights Act, Dr. King's dream of full racial equality is unfulfilled. African Americans face higher rates of poverty, unemployment and incarceration. Clive Myrie visited America's most segregated city, Milwaukee, to find out more.
Martin Luther King said there were 2 Americas. One was white, overflowing with the milk of prosperity. The other, black, a lonely island of poverty and brutality. 50 years after his death, are those 2 Americas any closer to being reconciled? On the face of it, little's changed at the Martin Luther King Elementary School in the Midwestern city of Milwaukee. 98% of the pupils are black, reflecting the demographic of the local area. So while segregation is now illegal in education, it happens anyway. Fine words, but Milwaukee is the most segregated city in America, where there isn't liberty and justice for all. The North and West are mainly black. The south and east, mainly white. In the affluent suburbs, postal workers are the most frequent black visitors. Academic Mark Levine has written extensively about the racial divide here.
Milwaukee, in terms of the level of segregation in the town, is precisely the same as it was 50 years ago. A black household making $100,000 a year has about a 20 times greater possibility of living in a concentrated poverty neighborhood than a white family.
And it's not just in housing that America remains a land divided, half a century after Dr. King had a dream. 50 years ago, the unemployment rate was 6.7%. In 2017, 7.5%, still roughly twice the rate of whites. And 50 years ago, just over 40% of black people owned homes, about the same rate as today. Yet 70% of whites are homeowners.
They've been taking everything we have, and now we're showing them we ain't afraid of them no more.
Housing has always been a racial fault line in America. Black people have so often been denied the right to live where they want or refused loans for homes. In 1967, thousands marched for fairness in Milwaukee.
They're gonna let me buy ya.
And these people were some of the protesters, demonstrating on this bridge the divide between black and white in the city.
Walking up the freedom land, the white people with their children and everybody else had bricks and bottles, name calling. There was all kinds of things that happened by the time you got to the end of that bridge.
Old newsreels helped jog memories of their sacrifice.
That's my mother.
That's your mother there?
Yeah, that's my dear mother.
But how much do they think things have changed in America?
Milwaukee has become more tolerant in where they place the blacks, but they're still doing the same thing. They're segregating us, putting us into different areas, though.
I don't care how much money you got, what you got, they're looking at this.
Right.
But some are fighting back. A non-profit organization, the Milwaukee Fair Housing Council, has undercover researchers who investigate landlords over racism. I met two of the researchers, one black, one white, who went to the same landlord looking for a flat.
They were very, very accommodating to me.
They were keen.
Oh yeah. I was told there's nothing available and come back later. I subsequently went back about a week later and was told nothing was available.
That was it?
That was it. It's really disheartening to me because it's a symptom for me of something that's really sick in this society. No matter what I've accomplished, no matter what my station in life, I'm reminded that I'm a black person living in America.
Dr. King wanted these children to achieve their American dream, and he wanted this country to find its soul. While the evil of inequality pervades, he remains a voice of anguish for millions.